The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 1. Location: Meatpacking District, Manhattan, NYC. I know it sounds dramatic, but something about the building felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Like the air had a weight to it that didn't belong. It wasn't just the dust or the lingering smell of rusted metal and vinegar. It was this sense, almost physical, that I was intruding. Like I'd walked into a memory that didn't want to be remembered. The guy who hired me barely looked me in the eye when he handed me the key and a printed list of rules. I remember his hand shaking a little. "Don't touch the dumbwaiter," he muttered. "Don't stay past 3:33 a.m. Don't turn off the hallway light." He didn't explain why, and I didn't ask. I thought I could handle it. I needed the money. The first 2 nights were uneventful, at least on the surface. The building groaned and whispered like old buildings do, and I kept telling myself it was just the pipes or the wind slipping through the cracks. But there were little things I noticed. The knives in the antique sets were always colder than everything else, no matter how long I held them. One of the ladles had this sticky film on it that wouldn't come off, even after I scrubbed it 3 times. And the hallway light, that one flickering bulb, it never actually went out, even when I watched it buzz and dim to almost nothing. I left every night at exactly 3:30, just like the rule said. But last night, the dumbwaiter moved. It started with a soft clang, like metal tapping against metal, coming from the far wall where the dumbwaiter shaft was built. Into the brick, I froze, pen still in my hand, hovering over a list of ceramic pie dishes. I didn't go near it, I swear. But the pulley groaned and the tiny elevator rattled its way down, slow and deliberate, until it thudded to a stop at floor level. The door creaked open on its own. I didn't move. I just stared at it from across the room, my pulse hammering in my ears. Inside, resting on the tarnished metal platform, was a folded linen napkin, and something wrapped inside. I inched closer. I had to see. The napkin was old, embroidered with delicate gold thread. Inside was a butter knife, ornate and mismatched, with a small dried smear of something dark on its blade. I would have dismissed it as part of the collection, except, for one thing, there was a note beneath the knife, folded once. My name was on it, in my own handwriting. I didn't remember writing it. My fingers shook as I opened the note. There were only 4 words written in blue ink. "Don't look behind you." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body locked up, stiff with this cold, electric fear that started in my spine and spread like frost. I stared at the words, reading them over and over, hoping they'd change, hoping they'd make sense. But they didn't. They couldn't. My own handwriting, the same crooked D I always hated, the little heart I sometimes drew on my eye when I was nervous. It was all there. I stood completely still for what felt like forever, listening. There was nothing. No breath, no footstep, just the quiet hum of the flickering hallway light and the soft creak of the building settling. When I finally turned around, the hallway was empty, but the knife was gone. I wanted to leave right then, but the clock on my phone said 3:14 a.m. I was too scared to break the 3:33 rule. It sounds stupid now, but I felt like if I left early, something would follow me. Like the rule wasn't just a warning, but a kind of protection. I went back to my table and tried to work, but every little sound made me flinch. I thought I saw movement in the reflection of the steel mixing bowl. Just a flicker, a shape, too quick to catch. I turned the bowl over. Nothing. When I looked back at my clipboard, a second note was there, resting on the stack of inventory sheets I had just placed down minutes earlier. This one said, "You forgot this," and underneath it was the same butter knife. I nearly knocked over the whole table, scrambling backward. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, and my eyes darted between the knife and the hallway, as if expecting something to appear. But I was alone. I picked up the note with trembling fingers, flipped it over, blank on the back. No signature, no marks, nothing. I didn't touch the knife again. I couldn't. It sat there like it was waiting for something, gleaming faintly in the buzz of the hallway light. That's when I realized the flickering had stopped. The bulb was perfectly steady now. Too steady. It hit me like a drop of ice water. The rules were all about the dumbwaiter, the light, and the time, and all three were being broken. Not by me, but around me. The dumbwaiter was moving, the light was different, and 3:33 was getting closer. I checked my phone again. 3:27. 6 minutes. I grabbed my things, shoving the clipboard and notes into my bag, leaving the knife behind. But when I turned back toward the hallway, it felt longer than before. I mean physically longer. The light reached further than it should have. Shadows seemed to shift just ahead of me, like the walls were breathing. I forced myself to walk, slow at first, then faster as the feeling of being watched grew unbearable. I didn't dare look over my shoulder. Not after the note. Not after what the air felt like, thick, almost syrupy, pressing against my skin. My footsteps echoed too loudly, like the space around me was growing wider. I passed the elevator shaft and noticed something that stopped me cold. The dumbwaiter door was closed again, but this time, a small trickle of liquid, dark and tar-like, had seeped out from the bottom seam. It smelled sweet, sickly sweet, like rotting fruit left too long in the sun. I bolted. No more rules, no more waiting. I reached the front entrance, already pulling out the keys, but when I went to unlock the door, the key didn't fit. Not just that. The lock itself was different. It wasn't the same old brass cylinder. It looked newer, shinier, like it had been replaced. My hands shook as I tried again. Nothing. I checked my phone. 3:32 a.m. 1 minute left. I slammed my fist against the door, screamed for help, even though I knew no one would hear me. That part of the meatpacking district was deserted at night, dead quiet. Then behind me, the sound of chains moving. The dumbwaiter was rising again. I turned slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run, to hide, to disappear. But I was frozen. The dumbwaiter rattled its way back up the shaft, louder this time, like something heavy was inside. Each clang echoed down the corridor like a countdown. I pressed my back against the locked door, eyes locked on that narrow steel compartment. It stopped. The small door creaked open by itself again. I couldn't see what was inside from where I stood, and part of me didn't want to, but my legs moved anyway, like they weren't mine. Every step felt like it took hours. Inside the dumbwaiter was a stack of notes. Not just one, dozens, maybe hundreds, all folded the same way. Some were crumpled, others stained. I picked one up with trembling fingers. The ink was smeared, but the words were still readable. "You've been here before," another said. "Don't leave me again." And then I saw the one on top of the pile, written in what looked like fresh ink, still glistening. "Time's up." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look. I knew it was 3:33. The hallway light went out. Not a flicker this time. Just silence and sudden perfect darkness. I dropped the note, my ears filled with this low, wet scraping sound, like something dragging itself across concrete. I turned on my phone's flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the black. The air felt colder now, damp and heavy. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over one of the crates I had cataloged earlier. My light landed on the far end of the corridor. There was a figure, small, unmoving, like it had always been there. My chest seized. It didn't step forward, it didn't speak. It just tilted its head slowly, like it was curious. And then it smiled. I don't remember leaving. I woke up outside on the sidewalk, my phone still in my hand. It was 6:47 a.m. The sun was up. The building behind me looked empty, boarded up just like before. No one believes me. I get it. But I checked the bag I brought home. All the notes were gone, except one, folded neatly inside my journal. It's in my handwriting. I don't remember writing it. It says, "Keep the light on." And every night since, I do. Even now. Especially now. If you're reading this, check your lights. And whatever you do, don't answer if the dumbwaiter comes up. Story 2. Location: Venice Beach Boardwalk, Los Angeles, CA. I used to think the creepiest thing about Venice Beach at night was the drum circles. You know, half-naked dudes smacking bongos like they're summoning sea spirits. But that was before I took the overnight janitor gig at the shuttered Boardwalk Arcade. They offered double the usual rate, cash, no questions. The only condition? I had to wear these chunky noise-canceling headphones the entire time I was inside. For safety, the owner said, tapping his temple like I was supposed to understand. I didn't, but I was broke, so I nodded like I did. Let me be clear. I don't buy into ghost stories or energy vibes or whatever TikTok witches are selling. I'm a failed session guitarist with tinnitus and a landlord breathing down my neck. If some rich weirdo wants to pay me to mop soda-sticky tiles in total silence, I'm not gonna ask why. First night, I brought my own flashlight, a thermos of black coffee, and one AirPod tucked in under the noise cancelers, just to keep me sane. That was my first mistake. The arcade looked like a taxidermy exhibit for fun. Everything frozen. Mid-joy. Prize machines still blinked with fake temptation. Skee-ball lanes lined up like empty bowling alleys, and the claw machine gripped nothing with mechanical despair. I figured maybe the owner was just paranoid about liability. Old wiring, live speakers, some OSHA fine waiting to happen. So I mopped. Long, boring figure eights across the tiled floor, stopping only to sip my coffee and pretend I hadn't wasted my 20s chasing gigs that never called back. An hour in, I got cocky. Took off the headphones to adjust my AirPod. Maybe switch playlists. That's when I heard it. Faint, warped carnival music like an old calliope dying in slow motion. I remember thinking, nice touch, creepy ambiance to keep the rats company. But then came the laughter. Kids. Not happy squeals, more like echoes. Like a laugh that had been copied too many times, degrading with each replay. I turned toward the speakers, unplugged, every single one. I stood there like an idiot, mop dripping at my side, trying to convince myself it was just some old audio file stuck in the system. Maybe a backup battery? Maybe the building had passive. Speakers wired into a different grid. I mean, it's LA. Stranger crap has happened. But that didn't explain why I could hear it clearly in one ear, the one without the AirPod. It was directional, like someone was piping the sound straight into my skull. I yanked the headphones back on so fast I nearly dislocated my jaw. Silence. Blessed, muffled silence. The kind you only get in recording booths and sensory tanks. For a while, I just mopped harder, faster. Like maybe if I moved enough, I'd sweat out whatever just happened. No more music, no more laughter. I convinced myself it was some dumb initiation prank. Rich owner, bored staff, rigged speakers for giggles. That illusion held, right up until I passed the row of retro cabinets near the back and saw the screen on the haunted castle machine flicker to life. No power cord. No glow from the main switchboard. Just a single frame frozen on the pixelated face of a girl with no eyes. I walked straight past it. Didn't stop, didn't blink, just tightened my grip on the mop and told myself, don't engage. It's broken tech, leftover charge, some glitch. But my body disagreed. Goosebumps lit up along my arms like static. I made it to the supply closet and shut myself in for a minute, pretending to look for floor polish I didn't need. I kept the headphones on, but under the muffled nothingness, I swore I could feel a vibration in the floor, like footsteps. Bare, and too soft for shoes. After a while, I peeked out. The screen on Haunted Castle was dark again. The arcade sat in artificial stillness, lights flickering in that slow, random pattern old fluorescents do when they're dying. I mopped a little more, but now my route avoided the back wall entirely. I told myself I was just being cautious, smart even. But then I saw something that punched the breath out of me. A single token, those oversized novelty ones they used to give out for skee-ball, rolled out from behind a machine and stopped exactly at my foot. I didn't touch it, just stared. It was too clean, too shiny, like it had just come from the coin press seconds ago. That didn't make sense. The machines hadn't run in years, according to the owner. I bent down slowly, keeping one hand on the mop handle like it was going to protect me. The token had a smiley face on one side, and on the other, scratched into the brass with something sharp, were the words, "Stay quiet." My stomach turned. I put the headphones back over my ears with shaking hands and stood up fast enough to make the blood drain from my head. The rest of the night blurred. I kept mopping, refusing to look anywhere but the floor, but I felt it, not alone. A pressure in the air, like the weight of someone watching from just behind the blinking prize booth. Every so often, the corner of my eye would catch movement. A flicker, a shadow, a flash of striped clothing. I told myself it was my reflection. I told myself I was exhausted. But when I went to dump the dirty water outside around 4 a.m., I found tiny wet footprints around the bucket. Bare feet, child-sized. And I hadn't seen a single soul go in or out all night. I left the mop and bucket right there and walked out without even clocking the final hour. Didn't even lock up. I just couldn't shake the feeling that if I stayed one more minute, I'd hear that warped carousel music again. Only closer this time. Or worse, I'd look up and finally see whatever had been pacing behind the machines all night. I sat in my car with the engine running until sunrise, the headphones still clamped over my ears. Not because of the owner's rule, but because I was too afraid of what I'd hear without them. I didn't go back, not even to collect my pay. I blocked the number when the owner tried to call, and I haven't set foot near the boardwalk since. But sometimes, late at night when everything's quiet, I swear I can still hear it. That broken melody, that hollow laughter, like it's bleeding in from somewhere else. I told myself I imagined it all. That sleep deprivation and desperation made me crack. But last week, I found something in my coat pocket I swear wasn't there. Before, a token, too clean, too shiny, and on the back scratched in fresh jagged lines, "Too late." Do you still think I imagined it? Let me know. If you've heard the music too. Story 3. Location: French Quarter, New Orleans, LA. I should have known something was wrong when the job interview lasted less than 5 minutes and ended with the phrase, "Don't worry, you won't need to interact with anyone." The woman who hired me barely looked up from her clipboard, just slid a keycard across the desk and told me to report at 10 p.m. sharp, no earlier. The hotel, if you could even call it that, sat on the edge of the French Quarter, wrapped in scaffolding and silent like it was holding its breath. The sign outside read, "Hôtel Mignon," half lit, letters flickering like they were afraid of being noticed. Inside, it smelled like lemon cleaner and something older, musty, wet, and slightly sweet, like rotting fruit left behind in an antique drawer. My station was a small desk across from a long mirror in the hallway just outside. Room 313. I remember asking why the room wasn't on the hotel map and getting only a tight-lipped smile in response. I thought maybe it was some kind of renovation thing, maybe storage or a forgotten suite. All I had to do was sit there and log who went in and who came out. But by midnight, I started noticing something strange. I never actually saw anyone enter the room. Just vague shapes reflected in the mirror. Shapes that didn't match the hallway at all. At first, I thought it was just the lighting. The hallway was dim, lit by a single sconce that buzzed faintly every few minutes. But the mirror, tall, gold-framed, slightly tarnished, showed things that weren't right. A flicker of movement when the corridor was still. A tall, thin figure pausing just outside 313, bending at the neck as if listening to something on the other side. But when I turned around, the hallway was always empty. I started writing it down anyway, because that's what they told me to do. Every time the mirror showed someone, or something, near the door, I noted the time, the posture, and anything else I could describe. But it all felt wrong. Like the mirror wasn't just reflecting, like it was watching. Around 2:17 a.m., the front door chimed and a man walked in. Older, gray hair, sharp suit. He didn't look at me, just handed me a name card that said Mr. Leclerc in handwritten cursive, then made a beeline for the elevator. I started to tell him we were only operating part of the building during renovations, but he was already gone. No check-in system, no luggage. I logged his name anyway, then looked up and saw his reflection in the hallway mirror. Only it wasn't moving. His reflection was standing still in front of room 313, even though he had just disappeared around the corner. My heart jumped. I stood up, stepped closer to the mirror, and Mr. Leclerc turned inside the reflection and smiled straight at me. I blinked hard and looked behind me. Nothing. The hallway was empty. No Mr. Leclerc, no footsteps. But in the mirror, he was still there, standing just outside room 313, like he was waiting for someone to open it. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe nerves, maybe that sick curiosity I always hated about myself. But I grabbed my clipboard and walked slowly toward the door. I didn't touch it. I just stood close enough to hear. The air felt colder. There, not drafty, dead. Like the air inside a sealed freezer. And behind the door there was this rhythmic sound. Wet, slow, like something dragging in circles across tile. I backed away and returned to the desk, heart racing. I tried to convince myself it was pipes. Old buildings groan, right? But when I looked again at the mirror, the hallway and the reflection was completely empty. No Mr. Leclerc, no motion. Except the door to room 313 was open. Just a crack. Wide enough to see that the inside was pitch black. I turned again. In the real hallway, the door hadn't moved. It was shut. I stared at both, back and forth, for maybe 10 minutes. And then I wrote it all down, like I was supposed to. I remember the exact words I used: discrepancy in reflection, door open in mirror only, possible hallucination. Just after 3 a.m., a couple arrived. Young, quiet, barely acknowledged me as they signed their names in the guest log. Anais and Jordan. They had the look of people who hadn't slept in days. Sunken eyes, pale skin. When I handed them a key to one of the upper rooms, Anais paused and looked over my shoulder toward the hallway. "Do you hear it?" she asked. I turned, but heard nothing. "Like water, maybe?" she added. Jordan touched her arm like he wanted her to stop. Talking, they left without another word. 10 minutes later, I saw them in the mirror, standing outside room 313. Neither moved, neither knocked. They just stared at the door like it was showing them something I couldn't see. I checked the hallway, still empty. My legs were tense, locked into place. I didn't want to blink. What if the mirror changed again and I missed something important? I tried to call the manager. The number she gave me just rang and rang. No voicemail, no pickup. I started scrolling the guest log, trying to figure out who else had checked. In tonight, and that's when I noticed something that made my throat tighten. No one listed had checked out. The previous receptionist, whoever she was, had neat handwriting, up until about 3 weeks ago. Then it got shaky, desperate, slanted in a way that reminded me of people writing on a moving train. The last line before mine said, "The mirror lies. Don't trust it." At 4:11 a.m., the hallway light went out. Just a soft click, and then nothing but darkness. My phone flashlight barely reached the mirror, which had started to fog at the edges, like someone had breathed on it. From inside, I couldn't see any reflections anymore, just that hazy silver sheen and my own shaky silhouette. But I could hear things. The dragging sound again, a faint creaking, like wood under weight. And something else, low and wet, like whispering, through water. I thought about leaving, about running down the lobby steps and never looking back. But I didn't. I was frozen by something I couldn't name. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was the pressure of that single stupid task. Record who enters and exits room 313. I hadn't done it yet, not really. So I stood, moved closer to the mirror, and there in the fog I saw a handprint. Faint, long-fingered, pressed against the inside of the glass. I stepped back. My own hands were shaking too much to hold the clipboard steady, but I wrote anyway. I needed proof, needed to document. As I scribbled, the reflection shifted. I could see someone standing behind me, not beside me, behind. I spun around, heart pounding so hard I nearly choked. Nothing. Empty hallway. But in the mirror they were still there. Inches away. A tall figure with no visible face, just static where features should be, reached out toward my shoulder. And that's when the real hallway door to room 313 creaked open. The sound it made was impossible to forget. Not the groan of old hinges, but something wet, like sinew tearing slowly apart. The door swung, just a few inches open, and cold air spilled into the hallway, sharp and metallic, like the smell of blood and rusted keys. I should have run, but I didn't. I stared into that darkness, and for a moment, I thought I saw Anais and Jordan inside, standing perfectly still, their mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide and wrong. Then they flickered and vanished like an image skipped in a faulty film reel. The door began to close on its own, slow and steady, and I swear something on the other side watched me watching it. I quit the next morning. I didn't even wait for daylight, just dropped the key card at the desk and walked out before anyone else arrived. I never got paid. The hotel's number is disconnected now and the building's no longer on Google Maps, but I still have the clipboard. I've tried to throw it away twice, but it always shows up somewhere else. Under my bed, inside my closet, once even in my back seat. And every time I glance at it, there's a new name written at the bottom. Names I don't recognize. Names I never wrote. I don't know what room 313 is, but I don't think it's done with me. If you've ever stayed at Hotel Mignon, tell me, please just tell me you got out. Story 4. Location Wicker Park, Chicago, IL. I took the temp job because I needed rent money, not because I enjoy being locked overnight with dusty polyester and the ghost of fashions past. The listing was vague. Inventory assistant for pre-opening assessment, overnight shifts required. But the pay was better than stocking shelves, and they said it'd be solo work. The place was in Wicker Park, an old thrift store boarded, up since the early 2000s. Some vintage guy had bought the space to relaunch it as authentically untouched. Right, because nothing screams cool like asbestos and mannequins with cracked faces. They locked the front gate with a padlock from the outside every night, and I'd stay in with a mattress on the floor, an inventory tablet, and a space heater that worked when it felt like it. The owner said it was to preserve the untouched aesthetic, but honestly, it felt more like they didn't want me wandering off with a box of old Levi's. There was only one weird catch. A mounted Polaroid camera near the front counter, wired to a motion sensor. Security measure, they told me. If anything moves after hours, it snaps a picture. I remember laughing. What, in case a bell-bottom ghost tries to make a run for it? The first night was uneventful. Just hours of cataloging moth-eaten jackets and silently judging every shoulder pad I touched. The Polaroid camera clicked once when I walked past it, which startled me more than I care to admit. It spat out a picture after a mechanical whine, and I tucked it on the counter without looking. At around 3 a.m., I fell asleep on the mattress, using a corduroy coat as a blanket. The air smelled like mildew and old perfume, the kind my grandmother used to wear. But I figured that came with the territory. Morning light cut through the boarded windows in slivers, and I stretched my back like a man twice my age. I noticed a small stack of Polaroids sitting near the camera, more than just the one I remembered. Curious, I picked them up. They were dark, grainy shots of the main floor, mostly the same angle. Racks of clothes, mannequins standing at stiff attention. In each frame, though, the mannequins had shifted ever so slightly. Nothing obvious, just different. One had its arm slightly raised. Another turned a few degrees toward the mattress. I laughed and blamed my brain fog. They probably just looked off because of the shadows, I muttered, already tossing them in the trash. By the third night, I started noticing things I couldn't rationalize as easily. Nothing dramatic, just little stuff. A clothes hanger that I was sure had been empty now held a sequined vest. A shoebox I'd stacked neatly on the counter was open again. At one point, I thought I heard a faint scraping noise from the back stockroom, like plastic sliding across tile. I told myself it was the heater kicking on or rats maybe. Still, I started keeping a flashlight nearby and checking every corner before lying down. That night, the camera went off 4 times while I was asleep. I didn't wake up during it, which is strange because it's loud, this wheezing mechanical groan followed by a pop. In the morning, I found more Polaroids. arranged neatly on the floor at the foot of my mattress. My chest tightened a bit when I saw them. The mannequins were definitely moving. Not much, just inches. One had its hand extended now, fingers curled slightly, like it was reaching for something. Another was facing my direction entirely, where, before it had looked toward the window, I picked up the last photo, the one taken closest to Dawn, and nearly dropped it. The mannequin in it was maybe 4 feet from my mattress. I hadn't put any mannequins near me. I moved the mannequins back that morning, dragging each one roughly to the far end of the store. They weren't light. Stiff plastic torsos mounted on iron bases, but I wanted distance. I told myself it was just someone messing with me. Maybe the owner had a key and thought it'd be hilarious to gaslight the temp. I even called him. He laughed it off, said he hadn't been by, and that the store was still fully secured. His tone got a little weird when I brought up the photos. "You're not moving them yourself in your sleep, are you?" he asked, half joking. I told him to go to hell and hung up. That night I didn't sleep. I sat upright on the mattress, flashlight in one hand, a metal clothes rod I'd unscrewed from a rack in the other. I felt stupid, but the idea of those things creeping toward me one frame at a time had carved a permanent line of tension across my chest. Around 2:40 a.m., the camera clicked. I jumped. Then again at 3:05. I forced myself to wait until morning to check the pictures, thinking maybe if I didn't look right away, it wouldn't be real. When I finally picked them up, I dropped the entire stack. The mannequins were moving again, but not all of them. Only one, always the same one. Its head was tilted differently in each shot. Its feet pointed inward now, like it had been shuffling toward me. I wanted to leave. Hell, I should have left. But I kept telling myself it was just a prank. Or maybe I was overtired and imagining the changes. I even Googled sleepwalking and false memory mannequin movement, like some desperate lunatic. But by the time the sun set, I was locking myself in again, convincing myself this would be the last night. I unplugged the Polaroid camera, thinking that would help. I even turned all the mannequins to face the wall. A petty move, maybe. But it made me feel like I had some control. That night, I slept with the flashlight on. I woke up cold and confused around 4 a.m. The space heater had shut off again and I could see my breath in the air. The store was silent. Still, I reached for the flashlight. It wasn't where I left it. I sat up slowly, already feeling that awful sensation of being watched. My stomach dropped when I saw the Polaroids, dozens of them, scattered around my mattress like flower petals. I hadn't reconnected the camera. It was still unplugged. I picked up one photo, then another, and another. The same mannequin, always closer. The last photo showed it standing at the foot of the mattress. Its hand was reaching out just inches from my face. I scrambled up, knocking over the heater and cutting my hand on a broken clothes hanger. I spun in circles, heart in my throat, flashlight back in my grip somehow. Maybe I grabbed it without realizing. The mannequin wasn't by the mattress anymore. It was gone. I checked the back room. Nothing. The front. Nothing. I even checked the bathroom stall that barely closed. Still nothing. But the back door, the one they said was bolted shut since 2004, it was cracked open about 2 inches. Just wide enough for something to slip through sideways. I quit that morning. Didn't even wait for the owner to show. Left the keys on the counter and walked out into the freezing air with nothing but my backpack. They called me 3 times that week. I didn't answer. On the 5th day, I got a text. Stores reopened. Come by, bring your friends. There was a photo attached. A wide shot of the newly cleaned shop floor. Bright lights, fresh paint, and near the center, like some sick joke, that same mannequin. Dressed in my old jacket, tilted head, feet pointed inward, hand slightly extended toward the camera. Dory 5. Location: Pike Place Market, Seattle, WA. They told me not to talk. That was the first rule. No speaking, not even a whisper. The second rule was weirder. If the shelves are already full, leave them alone. And the third? Wear the apron they give you. No matter what. I didn't ask questions. When you're sleeping under bridges and someone offers you cash for a few hours of night work, you don't screw it up by getting curious. Pike Place Market has a basement level that most people don't know exists, locked up, sealed off during the day. That's where they sent me. It smelled like damp concrete and dried flowers. Not rotten exactly, more like the scent of something left behind for too long. The shelves were arranged in neat rows, all numbered, and the boxes I carried down from the loading bay always matched the labels: glassware, spices, tinned meats. It felt mechanical, routine. I wore the apron like they told me. It had no logo, just a stiff canvas thing that tied high on the chest and always seemed too tight under the arms. But the money was real and no one bothered me. Until last Tuesday night. I'd just finished stacking a box of old-style jam jars when I noticed something off on shelf 7B. There, tucked behind a row of canned peaches, was a tiny ceramic cat, white with a chipped ear. I hadn't seen one like it in years, not since I was a kid. My grandmother used to keep one just like that on her kitchen windowsill. I remember knocking it over when I was 6, breaking the ear. She cried. It had no place in a storage shipment like this. I reached for it but stopped myself. The shelf was full. Rule 2. That's when I heard the humming. Soft, tuneless, almost like someone thinking out loud through their throat. I froze, hand still hovering near the shelf. There wasn't supposed to be anyone else down here. I worked alone, always. The humming was coming from the far end of the corridor, past the shelving units labeled dry goods. I waited, holding my breath, but it stopped as suddenly as it started. Nothing, just the low thrum of the old fluorescent lights above me and the faint, unsettling pressure of silence pressing against my ears. I told myself it was a pipe. Maybe. Air pressure through the vents, even though I'd never heard that sound before. Still, I didn't mention it when I clocked out. I just left the apron on the hook like always, took the envelope of cash from the tray near the service door, and walked out into the foggy Seattle dawn. But I didn't sleep well. My head kept circling back to that ceramic cat. The chipped ear was too specific, too exact. Like someone had pulled the memory out of my skull and molded it into clay. The next night, I came in early. I wasn't supposed to. We were given strict hours, but the door was already unlocked when I got there. I stood at the threshold for a minute, listening. Nothing. Just the soft hum of machinery somewhere deeper in. I put the apron on, but it felt heavier this time, like something wet had soaked into the fabric. As I moved through the aisles, I checked shelf 7B again. The cat was gone. In its place was a tin of smoked oysters and a can of pineapple slices. Something on the floor, though, something small and pale, caught my eye. It was a crayon. Broken in half, dull red. The kind you'd find at the bottom of a school backpack. I bent down to pick it up, and as soon as my fingers touched it, a flash of memory hit me so hard I staggered. My brother and I, hiding under the stairs in our old house during one of our dad's worst nights. He handed me a crayon just like this one to keep me quiet. I hadn't thought about that in years. I didn't want to. I dropped it and stepped back, heart pounding. I wasn't imagining this. Someone, or something, was placing these things for me. That's when the humming started again. Closer this time. No rhythm, no melody, just breath vibrating over vocal cords like a slow leak in a tire. I turned toward the sound, but there was no one in the aisle, just rows and rows of products perfectly still. I told myself to move, to walk away, but my legs wouldn't listen. The lights above me flickered once, not off, just a momentary stutter. And when they steadied, a shadow darted across the end of the aisle. Not walking, crawling. I didn't follow it. I wanted to. Some part of me needed to see what it was, but everything else in my body screamed no. Instead, I backed away, slow and careful, until I reached the service hallway that led to the stairs. But something about the air had changed. It smelled like old plastic and burnt sugar, like the inside of a melted toy. The humming had stopped again, but the silence now felt heavier, thicker, like it was waiting for me to break it. I turned the corner and nearly dropped the box I was holding. The shelves ahead were full, overflowing actually, but not with dry goods or cleaning supplies. They were lined with personal things, my things. A shoelace from the sneakers I wore in 6th grade. A photo strip from a mall booth with a girl I haven't seen in 15 years. A paperback copy of Dune with the cover half torn. The exact same copy I lost during a bus ride to Portland. Each item perfectly placed, organized like inventory. I stood there, surrounded by pieces of my life, and realized something I hadn't considered before. I wasn't stocking these shelves. I was being shelved, cataloged, filed away by someone or something that knew everything about me. Every memory I'd buried, every object I'd lost or thrown away, preserved here like relics in a shrine. I tore the apron off and dropped on the floor, backing out of the aisle like it might collapse around me. The humming started again, low and trembling. But now I could hear words buried in it. Not English, not any language I knew, just shapes of sounds that made my teeth hurt to hear. I ran. I didn't take the money, didn't look back, didn't even lock the door behind me. I don't know who nor what was down there. I only know it's still curating something with my name on it. And the worst part? Last night I found a scrap of that same apron in my backpack. I never brought it home. So if you're ever offered a night shift at Pike Place, just remember, some shelves aren't meant to be touched. And if you hear humming, don't answer. Just run. Story 6. Location: Times Square, NYC. They told me it would be easy money, just one night. You're perfect for it, the casting guy said, not even looking up from his tablet. It's immersive. Branding or some crap. Gen Z eats that stuff up. I didn't care. Rent was late. My agent ghosted me. And Times Square had chewed me up enough to know I couldn't afford Pride anymore. So yeah, I said yes. That was 12 hours ago. Now I'm standing in the lobby of a condemned theater, zipped into a 7-foot-tall foam raccoon costume, trying not to pass out from the heat or the smell trapped inside the mask. The rules were printed on glossy paper, taped to the dressing room mirror like a joke. Stay in character at all times. Do not remove the mask indoors. Do not respond if someone calls your name from behind the curtains. That last one made me laugh, until the crew left, and I realized they hadn't even locked the front door. It's past midnight now. The stage. Lights keep flickering even though I'm not touching the panel. And just now, as I was practicing the dance moves they gave me, someone whispered my name. My real name. Not Rocky the Raccoon. My actual full name. I froze mid-pose, one paw in the air, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape the suit. The whisper hadn't come from the speakers or the hallway. It came from the stage, behind the heavy velvet curtains where the crew had warned me not to go. My name, plain as day, soft but unmistakable. No one's supposed to know it. Not here. I registered for the gig under a stage name, filled the NDA with initials. No one called me by that name in weeks, not even my mom. But the voice? It said it like someone who knew me, intimately, like they'd practiced it. I stood there, not breathing, sweat dripping down my temples and pooling in my lower back. The suit was sweltering, but I didn't dare unzip it. The rules said not to. And I don't know why, but it felt like something terrible would happen if I did. I shuffled backward, trying not to trip on the oversized raccoon feet. The theater was too quiet, too still. The kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for you to do the wrong thing. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in one of the dusty lobby mirrors. The suit's eyes were wide and cartoonishly cheerful, but behind them, I looked like I was about to throw up. I tried to distract myself, looping the choreo again. Wave, spin, double thumbs up. But every creak of the floorboards echoed like footsteps. I started talking to myself just to fill the silence. "This is dumb," I muttered inside the mask, voice muffled by thick foam. "It's just a prank, viral marketing. Maybe they hit a speaker backstage." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The voice hadn't sounded tinny or recorded. It had breath, texture, like it came from someone close enough to touch me if I stepped too far into the wings. At some point, I noticed something else. The smell. It hadn't been there before. Under the layers of foam and fabric and old dust, something new had crept in, sweet but off, like rotting fruit left in the sun too long. I sniffed the air, instinctively turning toward the stage, and the scent grew stronger. That's when I heard it again. My name. Same voice. But this time, closer. Just behind the curtain. I didn't move. I couldn't. Something brushed the edge of the red velvet. A shadow, maybe. A shape I couldn't quite process. I backed away slowly, foam paws shaking. The stage lights flickered again, longer this time. And when they came back on, one of the chairs in the front row was no longer empty. I swear to God, I had looked just a minute ago. Empty. All of them. But now, one seat in the middle was occupied. I couldn't see who it was, and too far, too dark. But they were sitting perfectly still, hands on their knees like they were waiting for the show to start. Or finish. I couldn't tell if they were facing the stage or facing me. I stood there, breath caught in my throat, trying not to blink. The air felt thicker with each passing second. Then the whisper came again, but not from behind the curtain. This time, from the seat, my name drawn out like a question. And it knew the intonation, not just the sound, but the way people used to say it when they wanted something from me. It didn't feel like a marketing stunt anymore. This wasn't part of any script. I wanted to run, to rip the suit off and bolt, but the fear of breaking the rules felt bigger than the fear of staying, like something bad would happen if I broke character. Something worse than what was already here. I turned away from the stage, trying to focus on the exit signs, on anything that made sense. But even the theater itself didn't feel right. Anymore. The air had a pressure to it, like the whole place was leaning in, holding its breath. I stumbled, into the lobby, trying to retrace my steps to the dressing room. I figured I'd wait it out there, maybe call someone. Through the NDA, but the hallway was longer than before. That makes no sense, I know it doesn't. But I walked for way too long, passing the same faded poster for Cats 3 times before I realized I was going in circles. I stopped and pressed my gloved hand against the wall to steady myself. That's when I felt it. Not the wall, but a pulse. A slow, steady rhythm under the plaster like a heartbeat. I yanked my hand away and nearly tripped over the stupid tail dragging behind me. Behind me, I heard the stage curtain shift again. Not just once, repeatedly, like someone pacing back and forth behind it. I didn't want to look, but my body turned on its own. And when I did, the chair was empty again. But now the scent was stronger, cloying, sickeningly sweet. Like something had died in a candy store and no one bothered to clean it up. I backed up until I hit the wall, foam paws trembling, vision swimming from the heat and fear. That's when I felt the zipper move. Not me pulling it, it moved. Slow at first, then tugging hard like invisible fingers were undoing it from the top down. I screamed, awed, or tried to, but the suit's mouth didn't open. I was trapped in that stupid, smiling face while something behind me peeled it away. The rules. Don't take off the mask indoors. I twisted and jerked, but the zipper kept going, all the way to my lower back. Cold air hit my sweat-soaked shirt and I felt breath. Real, damp breath against the back of my neck. I don't remember much after that. Maybe I passed out. Maybe I ran. All I know is I woke up in the alley behind the theater, still in the bottom half of the suit, with a smear of something dark across the inside of the mask. The theater's boarded up now, not even scaffolding, just gone, like it was never there. No one returns my calls. The agency doesn't exist anymore. But sometimes late at night I hear it, just behind the curtain of my dreams. My name spoken sweetly, lovingly, and now sometimes, the answer.